Hi, everybody. My name is Tom Runge. I am with the executive team of the Our Promise campaign for CDCR. I've had the pleasure of being on the executive team for Our Promise for the past 6 years. We know the world looks a lot different this year, but the good works of Our Promise still go on. So unfortunately, we won't be able to do the fun events this year, but we wanted to talk about the good works that our money does out in the community. So with me today is a representative from one of the groups that I donate to. It's Lanz Nalagan. He is the corporate and annual donation chair for the LGBT Center. And thank you so much, Lanz, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, Tom. We're super excited to again participate in the Our Promise campaign. As you know, as a participant and donor, these contributions are most predictable and reliable. So we're very grateful for your longtime support of the Sacramento LGBT Community Center. And I'm happy to talk about what we do and where your dollars go to.
Yes, yes. So, one of the reasons that I started donating to the center was, a couple of years ago, I noticed that the center was starting a transitional housing program for LGBT youth. And I just, think about how difficult it is being a teenager, and on top of that, being, an LGBT youth. And on top of that, you're rejected by your parents or your family. And I just think of, how difficult a situation that is. You're on the cusp of being a functioning adult, and then you have the carpet pulled out from underneath you. So, I'm really grateful for that program that you do to help our challenge youth, get back on the path. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Wonderful. So the Sacramento LGBT Community Center has existed for nearly 40 years. And so during this brief discussion, I'll talk about who we are, why we need the help. You've identified one of the biggest needs already, and what your contribution and support creates. That's a picture of some youth volunteers at Sacramento Pride. So our mission is to create a region where LGBTQ people thrive, and we do that through 3 main mission pillars: health and wellness, that includes our housing programs. We advocate for equality and justice, and we also build a culturally rich LGBTQ community. One of the biggest needs that we've seen, which is why we embarked on our housing journey, is that 40% of youth experiencing homelessness today and in our region identify as LGBTQ+, and more than half are youth of color and trans identifying. We also have some other statistics about our community. Our Asian population are more likely to live alone and in poverty, and we're collectively 2 to 3 times more likely than our heterosexual counterparts to attempt suicide, and much more if we are transgender. Right. So our work, in the past year, we've provided a little over 4,000 emergency and transitional bed nights for homeless youth. And I'm going to kind of zero in here on this figure because 4,000 nights across all of our unique residents, and we just started in 2018. And I'll delve into how our programs are, divided, because our strategy is the reason why we're able to provide so many bed nights and wraparound counseling and case management. So we're not just addressing the symptoms of homelessness, we're also trying to prevent it and trying to create a more independent and sustainable next chapter in these residents' lives. So real quick, in terms of our program expenses, youth housing is our largest endeavor. At just under 40%, we have a little more than $1 million that are going into our housing programs, and for good reason. It's quite large. The way that we look at our housing programs is through a continuum, right? There are different levels of homelessness that youth are experiencing. I'll start with the first program that we established, and I think this is the one that you first learned about, Tom, and continue to support us for, is our Transitional Living Program. This one was established in 2018, at the beginning of 2018, and it's for LGBTQ identifying youth, 18 to 24, who are victims of crime, and let's face it, anyone who has been living on the streets, more or less has been a victim of some sort of crime or abuse. And they actually have up to 2-year stay. This is 6 beds for 2 years, and that includes the case management, the wraparound services, employment connections, identification procurement, and really this is intended for folks who are seeking long-term self-reliance. So a lot of attention and care is provided at this house, which is why it's up to 2-year stay. We also, at that same juncture, created our emergency shelter motel vouchers. So these are for folks who are looking for a short solution to what could be sporadic bouts of homelessness. They may have, a place to stay. They may have, somewhat accepting family, but they still find themselves on the streets. And so, or even more so, they suffer from relatively sporadic acts of violence or crime. And so they do need, shelter for about a week, a full work week. And this is for the same kind of population, but a different need. And we provide about 100 nights per year for a specific motel or a hotel. The following year, in 2019, we established, and this is one of our newest programs, our short-term transitional emergency program. This is our step house that's in Midtown with the big rainbow steps that people probably see when they drive.
It's just around the corner from me. It's a great place, and and I love it. It's so close by.
And this also serves a very unique needs by our youth experiencing homelessness. This is for 90-day stay. And this is more of a short-term stabilization, case planning, and observation of assessed needs so that we can, route these residents into the appropriate program. So for example, within 90, and this is 12 beds, so this is our largest. Within 90 days, if we determine that a resident probably would benefit for long-term self-reliance and still needs housing, we would direct them to the transitional living program. So it's almost like a central hub. It's your starting point. You have 90 days. You can either go for more long-term and highly monitored transitional living, or you might only need to be, considered for emergency hotel vouchers because you're well on your way to sustainability and you just need a few more nights to finish an application for an apartment. And we've seen, residents graduate from steps that go to either of directions, which is fabulous because it really decreases barriers to achieving stable housing when you can consider all of the different trajectories of a youth who enters into this program. And our newest, which was developed in August of 2019, is our host homes program. So this is almost like the last step to self-reliance, where whether they go through the 90 days or whether they go through the up to 2-year stay or whether they go through 5 nights in a motel or a hotel, we actually connect, once they're qualified, youth with community members who have an extra room in their house or in their apartment. And these community members are volunteers that are certified and vetted. They also receive a stipend for their offering of a room and board. And they also take on, a little bit of a mentorship role. So this is a pilot project that we started here in Sacramento, one of the first pilot projects in the country that are introducing youth who are trying to move on from homelessness, but still might need that careful attention from a community member who may have the extra resources and training to help. But there is no limit, and it's based on the terms that are agreed upon by the host and the youth. And so right now we have 10 hosts well, actually, we have about 12, I think. That's a 2018 figure. We have 12 hosts. These are families that have connected with youth who have graduated from any of the other programs. And this is kind of that continuum of care. But I can talk your ear off on this. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
No, I think the supportive housing, you know, I think that's the right model for you know, anyone really experiencing homelessness. You know, I think you guys have a fantastic program in place, and I think we're really going to see the rewards from this, well now, but you know, in the future, you know, for the generation that are coming up right now. It's fantastic. It really is fantastic what you're doing.
Thanks again for including me, Tom. We really appreciate you.
All righty.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.